um, actually how I approached this very challenging task to speak with these two excellent researchers here is that I just noted down questions that came to mind when reading about your work and again when I listened to your talks. And the first idea that actually came to mind when I read about your work was one of the favorite movies from my childhood, which is The Matrix.
Yeah.
The cipher, one character, has lunch or dinner, I don't remember, in the virtual world of the Matrix, and he says, I know this steak is not real, or maybe to make it more understandable here, the schnitzel is not real, but it is delicious, it is tasty, and so I don't care, and ignorance is a bliss. So, question to you, Michael, why can't we just totally immerse in the virtual reality? Or to put it in other words, isn't it only dangerous as soon as you re-enter reality?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are, there are certain there are dangers of neglecting the physical environment, neglecting your body, neglecting. So if you go into a virtual environment as a way of escaping the physical environment or forgetting about the physical environment, then you have clear risks. But I think one thing that I touched on in the talk and that I want to emphasize is the importance of authentic social interaction. So if you're escaping into virtual reality and only interacting with artificial intelligence, then it's something important about being a human being that we need to interact with each other, and we really lose something when we fail to do that. So that's a big concern. And you might say, well, we can interact in virtual reality. We can. We'll have to see how that goes. But one worry there is that I mentioned towards the end of my talk this importance of how much our face can reveal. There's a lot of work in psychology and embodied cognition suggesting that our bodily movements, the cues we give each other, the faces we make, are very important for social interaction. So when we lose that, I think we really risk losing something important about our humanity.
I see. So you're saying that because the virtual reality lacks completeness, it has to be not preferred over the real reality, but you could also argue then that the virtual reality is just not at the point where we can emulate faces and emulate emotions perfectly so that they can replace reality.
Well, would you be interested? So the social interaction in the VR, do you have in mind, would it be with an artificial intelligence or with a human being animating an avatar? I think that's an important discussion. I think that's an important distinction. If it's entirely with artificial intelligence, that sounds bad. If it's with a human being animating the avatar, then I think that's less bad, yeah.
And maybe one more thought about this. One can argue that the virtual reality is only one of many realities that a person perceives, and the real reality might be another one. And you can argue that virtual reality has unforeseeable consequences, but so does reality. And for example, the car accident in virtual reality isn't dangerous.
Yeah. Are you going in sort of a metaphysical direction where we start to say, well, people are running the simulation argument now. We're saying, well, maybe this is a virtual reality, and maybe this isn't. Maybe somebody's simulating us, and we don't know it. So, yeah, we can go in that direction. But I think that no matter whether this is base reality or simulation, or if we put ourselves into a simulation again, what's important, I think. From a number of philosophical traditions, what we can say is important is genuine social human interaction. So, even if this is a simulation, it doesn't matter because we have each other. We have this isn't real. This is a computer simulation, but we have each other, and we can have valuable experiences together. And I think that's one of the most important things we can identify. So, if we put ourselves into a virtual reality, let's stay together. Let's communicate with each other. Let's share these experiences together, because that's very important.
Okay, so to you, the main lack that you experience in virtual reality that's also dangerous is the lack of genuine social interaction.
Yeah, that's my main concern. Yeah,
and it's not only is that personal now, or is it actually the proven most dangerous consequence of the virtual reality that, in terms of health, in terms of values that are important to us?
No. There are a number of consequences. We don't know which one's the most dangerous. So I tried to identify some of them, but that is a factor. So I talked about the place illusion, how it tracks the way we move with what we experience. That's one factor, but there's also research suggesting that realistic social interaction increases our experience of being present in the virtual world. So it is important. And I mean, yeah, I guess I can't, just ram it down your throat and force you to acknowledge that social interaction with other humans is important. If you want to deny that, you can. But I invite you to reflect on it and to say that there's very little else that we can all agree on that is important in the world.
It's not actually my standpoint forever.
Okay,
but
okay.
I'm just trying to challenge you and myself at the same time.
Good. Well, I mean, when I say you, I mean just generally any audience, anyone. Some people say, "Well, I don't care about social interaction." Other people are miserable and so on. Something we all struggle with. But I think it is, if we want to talk about what's important in reality and what makes virtual reality, what makes things risky or less important, I think that's one thing to identify, is this shared experience, intersubjective experience. Yeah.
I see. Thanks. Second thought that came to mind actually was, and that's maybe for the two of you, or you jump in always, right? Whenever you want to add something, because I'm now addressing Michael, but obviously this should be a dialogue. And so
I actually wanted to add something because
Please.
I like your questions, because I get them a lot from the transhumanists. And I think there is an interesting book. It's called The Master and His Emissary, and it's a kind of it was written by someone who has worked with mentally damaged, brain damaged patients for decades. And he basically finds out that there are, you can have different emphases on thinking. And those people who are damaged on the right side of their brain and just work with the left side, they have actually a problem distinguishing between reality as it is and virtual reality. And the more brain damaged you are basically on your right side, the less you are able to make that distinction. Now, the hypothesis of that author, Ian McGilchrist, is that we are living in times where our educational system is actually, in our culture and our cities and so on, are emphasizing our left brain hemisphere and actually hinder our right hemisphere to work properly, or to work at the level or in every individual where we'd actually be capable of making that distinction. And my hypothesis is that a lot of software engineers and transhumanists are suffering from a low level of functioning of their right brain hemisphere.
Well, you bring up trends.
Would anybody object to that or feeling insulted about it? Okay.
You bring up. May I ask? You bring up transhumanism. I was thinking of it during your talk. Is the ethical machine? Is it going to? It can make us flourish as humans, but should the ethical machine make us go beyond humanity?
No, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
It's about the human.
Okay.
It's not about transhumanism. It's going back to the human.
Okay.
I think we will come to that later. What I wanted to put in the room as a question, because I think it affects both areas, but especially the code, ethical code you mentioned in your work, is why is it only a code for virtual reality? Because after reading your thesis, I realized that already now there are tons of examples where some environment influences the human being to an extent that the behavior changes. One could think of Kahneman, where reading large numbers leads to overestimating the population of some country, or even reading about elderly people makes people walk slower.
Yeah.
And one could go as far as saying that the virtual reality, the way we experience it now, which is attaching goggles to your face, is actually less dangerous because you have to consciously enter it. While the priming that happens with people in marketing actually all the time, it just happens to you, like to a passive smoker.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, there are differences. It's not something that just happens because you have to look where the advertisement is flashed. I mean, many times, right, you have cigarette ads on the bus stop, and if you're going to catch the bus, you have to look at it. But say if you use Yahoo email, you agree to use Yahoo email, and you're agreeing to use it, but the payoff is you have to look at these terrible ads all the time. So there is an analogy. I mean, I think we can generalize what I'm saying about social psychology to say that we should have an ethics of marketing overall. So I think we should have that. The difference with virtual reality is that, unlike with normal marketing, the entire environment is being controlled. They can pick up information about where you look, about what kind of faces you make when you look, whether you like it, what works, what doesn't work. They may track your heart rate, and they can target you at precise places in the environment. And I think the effect will be, it'll be total control over what you experience. So I think the effect will be much more powerful. And that's, I mean, the results in social psychology certainly apply to all forms of marketing, but with VR, the difference is that they can instantaneously make these environmental manipulations, and I think the possibility of manipulation is much greater.
Okay, so basically the new quality of threat comes from the degree of immersion and the fact that you cannot withdraw from the exposure of this technology.
The fact that the entire environment can be manipulated quickly. I mean, so in traditional advertising, right? You want to hang a cigarette ad on a bus stop. You have to go hang the ad, or you can, if you're fancy, you can have a digital display. But it's going to stay there. It's static. In this case, whoever wants to manipulate you or run an ad or get you to buy something, they can record your movements. They can record your head movements, your face movements, and then know exactly where and when to flash the stimulus in order to maximize their influence on your behavior.
I see. Actually, many of the things you put in this ethical code, I kind of found myself reflecting on when doing digital marketing, because actually it is still not entirely limited to virtual reality, the ethical questions you raised.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
If you think about Facebook, where you can just easily run a small test that shows that by showing people an ad, some of them are buying a product they would have otherwise not bought. Then you can also say that this is influencing a person to an extent where, regardless of virtual reality, you cross this ethical border. So I thought your code is kind of actually a more general thing, and I was just wondering why it's kind of limited. Obviously, you have to limit your area of research, I guess. But
we wanted to focus on VR, but you're right. These principles apply, and they're already, we can cite unethical behavior, in other places as well, for sure. Yeah.
Anything to add? Cool. Maybe one more question for you, and maybe both of you, because I read about your standards that you would apply to what you call the ethical machine, or generally how we should develop technology in order to be ethical. And then you ended basically with mentioning your book where you say, how can I make software engineers build ethical machines? And I guess this is something that basically affects both areas, because also when dealing with virtual reality, somehow one needs to get the idea across to the people who build these systems. And in my opinion, it does not help at all creating a legal framework when it's already too late. And probably while we are talking here, thousands of children attach Oculus Rift to their faces and jump around the house. And so it's already, you could say it's already too late. The whole discussion about how we should limit virtual reality and how we should limit technology. So I was wondering, what is your tactic that gets this thought into the heads of these people who are already out there building the technology every day?
First of all, I think we are at the very beginning of technology. So there is lots of room for building very interesting and good and supportive robots or flying vehicles like drones. And I'm very an augmented reality. So I think we are just starting. And so the engineering world has a lot of opportunities to build good systems. However, there are now two kinds of engineers. Some, or not many more, but let's say there are two prototypes. One is experienced engineers with a very positive mindset. They want to do something good for society. They're intellectually skilled people, questioning a lot of things, but they have no method and no knowledge about ethics. And they would like to build good systems, but there are no standards out there or any methods or any educational frameworks that would help them to do so. Computer science education has not catered to this demand. And I think this is now recognized that we need a change there. And my approach, a practical approach as an academic, is to say, here is a method, and now to try to turn that method into a standard with the help of the engineering world, and hoping that IEEE, which has 430,000 engineering members, will try to really also push for that standard and using it when it's out there. I do see also, though, a certain type of computer scientists who are transhumanists and who don't have a relationship with their bodies and who perceive people as wetware or mosh, or there are all kinds of really crazy terminology around what it means to be a human being, which from my perspective is more a sign of their kind of psychological they're sick, yeah. And there are people like that. I don't think that they are the majority, even though they tend to happen to be around in the tech community quite a lot. I mean, the density of the people of this kind of thinking is more than you would find it in the humanities.
So the idea goes into educating people around the values that they should have while building machines, right? Because what I found confusing is that I think you cannot just from the outside implement the value into the machine with the person not caring. And it sounded a bit like this because you were talking about the software engineering process.
Yeah.
And I believe that, for example, Facebook as a system, it can be an ethical machine and a non-ethical machine at the same time, depending on what you think about it, how you use it, and how the people who develop it use it. And if you ask Mark Zuckerberg, because he also mentioned that example, do you think Facebook is an ethical machine? Does it support the very values that we want to promote as humans? He would say yes, because, and I'm quoting the Pokemon example here, because you can foster real social interaction through Facebook. And that's what we do here, and we believe in this.
I do think that Facebook has potential to become much more ethical than it is right now. I'll give you an example. True friendship requires some privacy. And if Facebook offered, let's say, a $3 or €3 service a month saying, if you pay the €3, all of the personal exchanges that you have with others is encrypted. It is stored in such a way that even the company itself cannot access it, can for sure not run any analysis on this kind of data. Makes their corporate practices transparent around who accesses the system. Things like that. You know, there are a lot of technical means and services, so it's an economic and a technical design challenge, that Facebook could engage in, and then it would become a great platform, and you could have total privacy there in private rooms of communication, not fearing what they do right now is that, you know, they are selling the data, not the data itself, but they're selling any kind of analysis that you can run on the data.
But do you believe that Facebook itself as a system can be made an ethical machine even if the people who develop it don't really care?
No, I don't think so. It's not.
So it's about educating people in values, right? From early on, basically.
Developers and managers, both. No? It's not only about the engineers. It's also about those people who run the company. And I don't know from what I hear about Mark Zuckerberg whether he's the right person in the right job. Yeah? But
do you think he can be fired?
No. But yes, I mean, I don't know. That's speculation. But the point is that even the technology that is there could be tweaked and changed in such a way that it would become much better than it is right now.
Mm-hmm. I can answer the question just regarding VR. It's a good question about whether or not it's too late. And so the Code of Conduct was published in February. I've been talking with people about it, and I mean, one thing that can definitely be implemented is as I recommended in the talk, just warnings, just warning the consumers, just raising awareness. That's simple to do. It's not expensive, and I don't think. And so then it gets into, well, will it hurt sales? What does the industry say about it? So I've received mixed reactions from people in the industry. I mean, as businessmen, business persons, they want to sell their product. That's their goal. So one strategy that I've taken, we'll see how it goes, is to make the case that in the long run, it's better for them to have ethical concerns now. It's better for them to pay attention to these risks, to take steps to minimize the risks, because there may be backlash if people, if someone suffers some kind of psychological trauma from using VR, the media gets hold of it, and it's bad. It could be bad for business. So you could appeal to the pocketbook and say, well, as a business, it's in your best interest to look out for these sorts of things. On the other hand, will they do that? That's something we're working on. Yeah.
I would like to comment on your argument. We should warn the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know that in Europe, when you buy cigarettes, on every cigarette box, you have this. This can cause your death. Yeah. Or using condoms. Yeah. You know that you can die of AIDS. Yeah. And still, people smoke.
Yeah.
And even if it's a death threat, people are still continuing. They underestimate long-term risk. That's just we are wired like that.
Yeah.
And so I do not believe in warnings, and I also don't believe in delegating our ethical decision-making responsibility into lawyers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we need to get into a different mindset about what it means to create progress and to innovate. We have to, the seed is how and why do we innovate? And this is also about business. It's a lot about business. It's about a long-term sustainable business strategy and the question, what is worth to be put into the world?
Yeah. Well, let's do both. I mean, unless there's evidence that warnings don't work, it's an easy attempt. But you're right. I mean, I agree with you. It's not sufficient. Yeah.
So your way is partly legal and also partly educational, or what is kind of your approach to?
It's difficult because I can see the point about regulations, and I can appeal to the business, to the industry, and say, look, you don't want regulations. That's why you should self-regulate. Will they do so? I don't know. It's a work in progress right now. I don't have the solution. I mean, ideally, I think changing our way of thinking about innovation and progress would be great.
I think it did for the people here.
For people here, that's right.
Especially with the video format.
Well,
yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Maybe because I look in many hungry faces, I think we should call it a day and have our real schnitzel over there. Or actually, I don't care if it's real.
Danke fürs Durchhalten. Sie haben die obere Bergtalstation schon erreicht. Es ist nicht mehr weit zum Gipfel. Wenn Sie in den Hof hinausgehen bzw. sich etwas zum Essen nehmen, der Hof ist bitte frei zu nützen, auch die Getränke darin. Und wenn Sie dahin